My name is Kimberly Hay, and I'm the president of Wild Ones of Northern Kane County. And I wanted to welcome you all here tonight to this really exciting program. I'm really looking forward to hearing what Adam and Barb have to say about the dark skies, and really enchanted by the whole idea. So I wanted to say, first of all, we are actually in the midst of changing our name from Wild Ones of Northern Kane County to Wild Ones of Greater Kane County, because we have so many more people that are here from the southern part of the county, as well as other outside the county. So we're really excited to expand this program and expand the whole idea of native plants and native habitats. A few little things I want to talk about, and then Luann's going to talk about our upcoming programs. Our plant sale, pre-sale this year, which 46 of our members participated in, which is the most we have ever had, which is just so exciting to know that we're getting all these native plants in the ground to attract our native birds and bees and insects and our animals and create natural habitats, which is the goal, of course, of our program. So we're just so excited about that. Our sort of public sale will be taking place on May 21st. We have heard that we have to change the venue, so we'll be letting you know about that. But we're going to be sending out invitations to the public sale by I think Evite or Eventbrite, right? Mm-hmm. Eventbrite, and it's going to cost $10 to get a ticket, but that $10 is you get it back when you buy the plants. So that will be May 21st. I'm not sure of the venue because it's changed, but we'll let you know about that. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Luann, our program director, and she's going to tell you about upcoming programs.
Thanks, Kim. Hey, the program committee is really excited about tonight's program, and then we've got some fun ones coming up. On Thursday, April 22nd, Earth Day, much beloved Tom Simpson, research field guide ecologist for the McHenry County Conservation District, is going to be talking to us about plant phenology and the changing climate. On Thursday, May 27th, Dr. Allison Sacher-Velat, the curator of herpetology of the Chicago Academy of Science, is going to be talking to us about the identification, natural history, and conservation of frogs of the Chicago region. That ought to be fun. I don't know if any of you have gone to the big Wild Things seminar. Well, she has been there many times and delighted us. On Thursday, June 24th, author and environmentalist April Anderson, maybe some of you remember her. She is very active here in our area. April Anderson is going to do a book preview of her just published field guide to everyday life, useful ways to reconnect with nature and humanity. The board from Wild Ones has reviewed it, and so far the reviews are definitely thumbs up. You're going to enjoy this one. And we have 2 garden tours, one in July, one in August. If you'd like us to tour your garden, we're open, and we'd love to tour more in September. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Kim.
Okay, a few little housekeeping things, just so you know, even though this is our monthly meeting, it's not in really a meeting form, it's in webinar form, so you can't see each other. So if you have questions, put them into the Q&A for questions. And if you want to put comments, you can put those in the chat. And Barb and Adam will answer the questions after the webinar is over. So I wanted to introduce Barb. Excuse me, I have to take my glasses off. Let's see. I've known Barb. I was trying to figure out how long I have known you, Barb. It's been quite a while. So you started part-time with the Forest Preserve, at least. I think so that was at least 6, 7 years ago. Anyway,
it's 9 years ago. Long time.
Okay. Oh my, I'm getting old. Okay. So she was part-time person in the education department. And then when Valerie Blaine retired 2 years ago, right? 2? Oh, good. Barb was hired as the environmental education manager. Some of you may know I volunteer a lot with the Forest Preserve, not only for restoration, but in their education program. So, and I've taken a lot of classes through the Learn from the Experts program. So I've had a lot of time to interact with Barb, and she is just such a delightful person. The thing I think I'm most struck with her at first is that she's very curious person. She's always wanting to know more things. And so especially about the natural world. So, and her excitement and interest and knowledge of it really comes through. She has a lot of energy and a lot of curiosity and is always seeking to learn new things. A little bit about her background. She grew up in Chicago next to LaBelle Woods Forest Preserve. And so she developed a very early love for urban wilderness. She received her bachelor's degree in biology from Aurora University and began a career as a research biologist. She then shifted into a series of roles managing the business of science and received an MBA from Northwestern University. She is thrilled to have transitioned to her career to a full-time naturalist so she can spend as much time as possible igniting a passion for enjoying and protecting our natural areas. So I'm going to hand it to Barb, and then she's going to introduce Adam to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim, for that really nice introduction. And hi, everybody out there. I can't see you, but I recognize so many of your names, and it's great to be with you tonight. I'm thrilled to be here with Adam. Adam and I met, it's been about a year ago, although because it was COVID times, we've actually never met in person, which is a little crazy to believe. But we really have a shared interest in protecting dark skies and light pollution and all types of natural phenomena. And it's kind of interesting because Adam and I share another commonality, and that we had other careers, and Adam still has another career, as well as loving nature. So Adam grew up in rural Michigan. He told me that he really loved to really appreciate and enjoy the dark skies there, and that stayed with him his whole life long. But he now lives in Glen Ellen, and he's active there in a lot of environmental causes and volunteer organizations. But as well as being a full-time practicing attorney with practices in Wheaton and Chicago, he spends a lot of his free time with his role as a local delegate of the International Dark Sky Association, which I didn't really know a lot about until I started talking with Adam, and he invited me to join him in a presentation similar to the one that we're going to give tonight about a year ago, and we've done it a couple of times since then and have 4 or 5 more booked. There seems to be a lot of interest in this topic, which is really rewarding to see. So we enjoy doing this. Adam has done a lot of lobbying with his neighbors in Glen Ellen. He shared some letters that he's distributed among his neighbors to try to get them to turn out their lights or use more appropriate lighting sources. So he has a real nice way of impacting others in a gentle way and sharing the facts and the knowledge, and how just by going out, if they like to enjoy fireflies, for instance, what are the benefits to them in turning out their lights and shifting the types of spectrum that they're using. So we're going to be sharing the presentation today. Adam is going to talk to you at first about what light pollution is, the different types of light pollution, what we're missing in the night sky when we have the impact of light pollution. Then I'll talk a little bit about the impacts of light pollution on our local wildlife and plant communities, and shift it back over to Adam so that he can talk about all of these problems that we've raised in our earlier part of the discussion, how we really can solve them in a fairly easy way so that we end the discussion on a positive note, and then we'll open it up to your questions after that. So Adam, is there anything else that I missed or you'd like to add?
I think you've said it all, Barb. Thank you so much. And I have enjoyed working with Barb tremendously. And I expect that we'll continue to enjoy working together through all the seminars that we have scheduled. There's been a tremendous interest in this issue. And this topic, more or less, it's central to everything that I think you even have scheduled, from what I've just heard. Because it is so universally environmental with everything that we have. We've always had a day and we've always had a night. So what we're going to more or less talk about is how night is disappearing and becoming day, and the effect that has on everything, our entire cycle of life. So thank you, Kim. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Luann. Thank you, Barb. I'm going to go ahead and start a screen share, hopefully. All right. So I am your local delegate with the International Dark Sky Association. I am here to speak on behalf of the International Dark Sky Association. Before I forget, if you have your pencils ready, please write down the IDA website, which is www.darksky.com. I'm sorry, .org. And please, if you have time, go ahead and visit that site, because you'll learn a lot from that site, probably more than I can discuss with you tonight. And actually, it's very much informative. It can also direct you to stores where you can buy fixtures that we'll discuss tonight. The IDA does work globally. I think currently IDA is present in as many as 51 countries. I think there are as many as 150 certified international dark sky places, including, I think at this point in time, most of the national parks out west. And I believe most of the state parks in the state of Utah. And I'm trying to do what I can to expand that to all the parks that are part of the Great Lakes region. The IDA is a nonprofit. It's been more or less doing the best it can to address light pollution, I think, for about 35 years now. So as I more or less said as we started, at one time we had dark skies. We had a real night. We can see here we've got Van Gogh's Starry Night, which was painted in 1883, and it's over the city of Chicago skyline. In 1883, there were not many, if any, true artificial lights at night. There might have been some gas lamps and things of that nature. So when Van Gogh painted Starry Night, I think in France, he was looking at the night sky without light pollution. Barb and I like to start with this slide to more or less address examples of how light pollution has exploded. You can see that we have a number of years here that go back from the 50s, 70s, 90s, and forecasting into a couple of years. So you can see with the 50s, there was very little light pollution. Now, back at that time, most of the lights were, you know, what was really what Thomas Edison invented. And then we kind of developed into fluorescent lights and things of that nature. More recently, LEDs have become much more used by municipalities and now us with our residential homes. And we'll be talking about sky glow in a minute. If you look at the Great Lakes, look at all that light pollution that's now over the Great Lakes, but there's no lights over the Great Lakes. That's all what we call sky glow. It's really horrible. And if it keeps going the way in which it's going, it'll probably swallow up the entire West too at some point in time. Now, most people live in urban areas, but only 2 out of 10 people on the Earth can actually see the Milky Way. I don't know if all of you have observed the Milky Way at some point in time, but the IDA kind of uses it as a marker. We want to be able to have dark skies where we can be able to see the Milky Way. But currently, light pollution, at least in some shape or form, affects almost 99% of the USA and Europe. So, especially for people living in urban areas, most of them don't have the opportunities to see the Milky Way. So this is, I got 3 pictures here. I kind of switch them out from time to time. This is a little farm out west, and you can kind of see the Milky Way there over the farm. And if you look to the left, you can kind of see some of that sky glow too at some little distant town. right now, most of the light pollution that we have is from street lamps and from parking lots. You might notice that, for example, car dealerships have these horrific light fixtures and very bright white lights. With the switch to LEDs more than ever, these lights are becoming more white and more bright. Here's a little picture of just the night sky. You can kind of see the color of the Milky Way, and of course we have all those other stars. Just a little astronomy here for a minute. All the stars that we can see at night are from our Milky Way. On any given night, if not for light pollution, we should be able to see with our naked eyes as many as 2,000 stars from within the Milky Way, right? We're a solar system within the Milky Way. We're a star within the Milky Way. But unfortunately, here in this area, maybe not so much for some of you that are more rural in Kane County, but certainly for me in DuPage County, and as we move to Chicago, it's even worse. We probably can see not more than about 30 to 40 stars on any given night, even the best of nights, with our naked eye. And this is the last of the 3 photographs that I like to show, because I think most of us might remember that last summer we were looking for Neowise, the comet. I could not, for the life of me, find it in the sky with my naked eye. But we can see here that a lucky photographer out west was able to capture it, not just beautifully, you know, the comet itself, but the stars and everything else that was part of the night sky. And this is what we used to have everywhere. And our animals had this, and our plants had this. And now we're being confronted with a huge explosion of what is now becoming day and night. So what is light pollution? Light pollution basically comes in 3 forms. The IDA kind of more or less discusses 3 forms of light pollution. Sky glow, which all of us can see every night. Glare, and light trespass. So sky glow is basically the light that finds its way up into the sky. And once it finds its way up into the sky, it just, because of physics and physiology and everything that goes on in our sky, it just explodes across the sky. We have a light night sky. You can see here to the right, we have more sky glow. And then to the left, we have a little bit less sky glow. It's misdirected light, it's wasted light. It's all wasted energy. And we can change it, actually, quite simply. So we'll be talking about basically how we can address light pollution at the end of the presentation. You can see to the left what is before, and the sky glow and the glare and the light trespass. And then the same photograph, the same location, I should say, after people have made a difference. That sky glow is no longer present, that glare is no longer present, and that light trespass is no longer present. And we're back to what we've always had for all these centuries and all these generations, which is dark skies at night. For us on the ground, you know, we're very much affected with a very obnoxious glare, and you can almost see that here with this slide, and with the LED lights, which just shine that light out so much more intensely, the glare is becoming significantly worse for us. So what happens with glare? It affects how well we can see. We have photoreceptors that over all the generations that we've been here have been designed, you know, physiologically to react to what is day and night. So when we have dark, typically our pupils expand. You can see it. You've probably seen it many times. But when the light is in our eyes and we're confronted with glare, our eyes constrict, our pupils constrict. So we're seeing less. If we don't have glare approaching us, in other words, we're allowed to have our photoreceptors addressing what we would typically have. We should be able to see as many as much as 30 times more light at night. So our eyes will receive as much as 30 times more light. And that allows us to adjust so that we can see better at night. And glare is very much affecting our security. One of the big hurdles that I find with respect to addressing light pollution is that many people perceive that more light is more safe, that they'll be safer if they have more light, and if that light is more white and more bright. But that's not true. There are not any studies that suggest that more light is safer. In fact, there are studies that suggest that less light is safer. More light actually attracts criminals because then they can see what they need to see. Less light more or less causes them to go elsewhere where there is more light. And for us, we're becoming blinded by our own light. So we can't see what we want to be able to see. So if you look at this slide here to the left, you'll see basically a floodlight on that wall. That light is what we see when we look in the direction of that building. And because that light is shining at us, it's constricting our pupils, and we're not able to see what we would typically be able to see if we just let our body take care of ourselves. We're not able to see what else is in our environment. But if we shield that light, like you see here in this photograph, and if you have an opportunity to go outside and do this yourself, I think you'll more or less see what I'm trying to emphasize here. If you shield that light, you're no longer looking at that light, or that light's no longer looking at you. Your pupils are going to open up, you're going to receive more light, and you're going to be able to see your environment around you. And of course, you can see the gentleman at the opening to the fence, whereas you couldn't previously. And you might see this a lot when you're driving, for example, especially for older people. If you've got headlights coming at you, you're almost blinded to the point where you can't see the pedestrians that might be on the sidewalk. You can't see anything around you. So that glare, especially with these white LED lights, is very much affecting our security. At the end of the day, better and more well-designed light is more safe. And of course, we have light trespass. You know, we have to shut our shades at night because we have so much light shining into our bedrooms. And that same light is affecting our frogs. It's affecting our animals who are always accustomed to having dark nights. It's affecting our pollinators. It's affecting the entire cycle of life, fireflies too. So that light trespass that we're receiving is very much affecting not just us, but everything on our planet. You can control this. And that's what I do when I send my letters. I do my best to tell people, hey, let's do what we can to affect and improve light trespass. In my humble opinion, light should stay on our own properties. If it's not staying on our own properties, we are polluting our neighbors. We're polluting our wildlife friends. We're polluting our sky. We're affecting sky glow. And the people who really enjoy looking at the stars can't see those stars as well. So when you're thinking about what you can do at home, you know, look to see to the extent to which the light at your house is trespassing onto your neighbor's home and maybe into their bedroom windows. So what are the light pollution consequences? Barb is going to talk about everything wildlife and plants. I'm just going to address a couple things. First is energy waste. Every time we have a light bulb on, even though LEDs are more cost efficient and we do want LEDs, I'm not saying we shouldn't have LEDs, we want LEDs, but every time you have the light on, you are, when you might not otherwise need it, you are wasting energy. And when you waste energy, you know, think about it this way. You're affecting climate change. So every time you've got a light on outdoors that you don't otherwise need, and maybe you don't even notice it's on because it's always on, it just comes on, or you turn it on, you leave it on, you are burning coal. You are burning fossil fuels. You are increasing global warming. So if you're very much concerned about climate change, this is just one good reason to think twice about whether you should keep those lights on. 13% of residential electricity use in the US is for outdoor lighting. More than 35% of that, and I'm just talking about residential outdoor lighting, I'm not talking about municipal or anything more than residential. 35% of that outdoor lighting, residential outdoor lighting, is completely wasted. $3 billion per year is lost just to sky glow, wasted light. 20 million tons of greenhouse gases annually, simply because of wasted residential outdoor lighting. 600 million trees would need to be planted to offset that carbon emission. So you can just see here, $3 to $7 billion is spent every year by us in the US on unneeded lighting. 21 million tons is burned by us unnecessarily every year of fossil fuels. So before I hand it over to Barb, I just want to talk a little bit about human health. For us, the LEDs, and especially the LEDs that have white blue light, are affecting us and our health. I'm going to talk about light color later. I'm going to talk about brightness later. For us, and much of what Barb is going to talk about, the significant factor is blue light, white light, which is basically mimicking daylight. And when we are exposed to that, even just a little bit, through light pollution in our windows, through our tablets that we watch at night, and so on and so forth, we are affecting the release of a hormone known as melatonin. And maybe some of you have heard of melatonin recently because there's been some discussion about melatonin with respect to COVID. If we don't have melatonin, we're affecting our circadian rhythm. We will have difficulty with our sleeping. I'm not going to read this, but I just wanted to emphasize that in 2016, the AMA actually published guidelines, mostly in response to municipalities going to LEDs with their street lamps, to give guidance to reduce the harm from high intensity streetlights. And what the AMA, American Medical Association, basically said to municipalities is, don't use that blue-white LED. Go to a warmer LED, shield that light, and make it less bright. If you don't, you're affecting everything that lives on this planet. So Can melatonin help treat COVID-19? The Cleveland Clinic, a very famous, well-respected clinic, just recently published a study that suggests that melatonin actually helps address COVID. More generally, what it does is it allows us to sleep better. And when we're sleeping better, our body fights disease better. And melatonin, it's been shown by many, many studies, actually helps our autoimmune system. So while we're sleeping well and there's melatonin circulating through our body, our autoimmune system is improving. So what are we doing to try to address melatonin now? Well, some of you, maybe you've seen these blue blockers. So especially with the use of our tablets at night, we're not going to wear these glasses when we go to bed because of all the light coming in the windows, I don't think. People are actually selling blue blockers to reduce our exposure to blue-white LED light that's affecting our ability to sleep well and to release that hormone melatonin. So if we want to do anything apart from fighting climate change, and of course addressing all the wildlife issues and so on and so forth, do what you can to reduce that blue white light so you more or less, of course, help your own health. So typically when Barb's not with me, I address ecological impacts, but since Barb's with me, she's going to do that, and I'm going to stop share. Barb?
All right. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for setting us up to hear about advancing from the impact of light pollution on humans to other organisms that are out there being exposed to sky glow, direct light, and all that blue light that Adam just mentioned. So I'm going to switch over to my own slideshow here. And talk to you all a little bit about the impact of light pollution on wildlife and plants and what we can do about changing that. And then Anna will finish with some suggestions of what we can all do to change the impact that we have both on our neighbors and on ourselves and on the wildlife and plants in our natural areas that, especially if the natural area is at the edge of an urban location, it's going to get that sky glow spillover. If there's a street light that's close to a natural area, it's going to be shining in places that it's not directed at. So let's take a look at the impact of light pollution on wildlife and plants. So as diurnal creatures, we might not always think about what's going on in the nocturnal world, but a lot of animals are active at night and really require the cover of darkness to thrive and to carry on the processes that are important to keep them healthy and happy. Things that go on at night that are really important to the success of our wildlife include foraging and hunting. A lot of prey animals, are feeding at night, and in cover of darkness, predators are less. They have more time to forage. The predators that are out have less competition. So the nocturnal world is a great place for those animals that are adapted to that condition. Nocturnal animals are especially adapted to conduct courtship and mating rituals at night. Those that have signals that can only be seen in darkness, we're talking about fireflies mainly here, really depend on that darkness to survive and thrive. Flowering and pollination are closely tied together. There are a lot of native plants that flower in the evening and have co-evolved with insects to pollinate them at night. Migration. Most of our birds that migrate do so at night. There are less predators in the evening, and in warm tropical areas, it's cooler at night. So there are advantages to migrating in the evening hours. Now, animals that conduct these processes have adapted. They have special features that allow them to succeed at the things that they're doing in the evening. For foraging and hunting purposes, this particular owl has highly enlarged eyes that let in a lot of light so that its night vision is good. And it also has especially, it has more rods than cones. Rods are involved in dim light vision, whereas cones are more color vision. So it can see very well in dim light, maybe not very good color perception, but in terms of hunting, it's really well adapted for foraging and for hunting in the evening. Courtship and mating. This is a prototypical bioluminescent insect that we see that really depends on that light signal being seen by a mate, and also in some cases luring in other species of fireflies that we'll talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides. Particular moths are especially adapted to be able to feed and nectar on flowers that bloom at night, like this hawk moth with a very long proboscis that can reach down into those tubular shaped night flowering plants. Also, the hawk moth is a very interesting adaptation where it can slow down portions of its brain and direct thought to being able to fly very specifically and very precisely to line up with the flowers that it's nectaring on, and direct brain activity towards that versus other activities that are going on, so that it can hover and really do well in the evening. And then migration. Birds are specially adapted to migrate in the evening. They use celestial cues and also the magnetic poles and olfactory senses. So it's that celestial cue that's really important in the evening and is impacted by light pollution if it's out there, and it makes their migration capability not as good. We'll talk more about that in a couple of slides as well. But those are the things that are going on in the evening when we're all sleeping, hopefully, if there's not a street light shining in our windows. Now, scientists have known for a long time that animals require proper amounts of food and water, but it's only very recently that they have done studies that show that the amount of sunlight and the length of the evening is just as important to a lot of animals' success and ability to thrive. And this term scotobiology was coined to really define the study of the biology of darkness, but it was only coined in 2003. There was a Canadian paper that was presented at a conference in that year, and it really did define how many species of animals really depend not just on light, but the length of the day's light and darkness to manage their circadian rhythms and all the other processes that they depend on to thrive. So scotobiology is a fairly new term, and it's one that is really important when you're thinking about animals and photoperiod and how they do in the evening hours. So scotobiology was first talked about only in academic circles with the presentation of that Canadian paper in 2003, but since then it has really made its way into more of the popular press. This book, published in 2006, I actually just finished it a couple of weeks ago. It's a great introduction to the ecological impact of artificial night light. How the Earth, Adam mentioned gas lights being used. This book has a really interesting chapter about how gas lights started and there wasn't a lot of light pollution, and how certain cities, Paris specifically, still rely on gas lights and really manage their darkness with gas lights versus electric or LED lighting. So it's a great book that talks about the history of lighting the world, as well as the consequences of light pollution and its impact on wildlife. There are sections on ecology, but it's just a really good overview of light pollution and its impact on everything.
Yeah, the City of Lights, Barb, is really working hard to address light pollution.
Yeah.
Very hard to address it.
And the book actually went into the amount of money that they spend on doing it. It's significant. It's many millions of dollars. So they must be seeing a benefit from spending that amount in terms of tourism, and people are actually drawn there because of, you know, dark skies. That's one of the nice features about going to Paris. So the field of scotobiology more recently has even made its way into children's literature with this Dark Matters book for kids. And fascinating, there's even a musical compilation from a jazz trio based in Brooklyn about scotobiology. And I'm not quite sure what the lions, I think it's the lion's mane fungus there on the cover of the album has to do with scotobiology, but you know, they're making an effort there. And there's even a song on there. I don't own the CD, but I did look at the playlist, and one of the songs is Solanaceae. So, you know, they're getting into the nightshade family, and they got a song totally devoted to that. So I think the point is that scotobiology is making its way into popular culture, and it's not just a fringe science anymore. It's a well-accepted scientific fact that that darkness and light impact our wildlife and our plants.
Yeah, it's a much more researched topic now. Most of the research has been the past 10 to 15 years because of the explosion of the bright white light from LEDs.
Yeah, you know, and when I was a research scientist, when a trend in science was fairly new, one of the ways to show how important it had become in a quick amount of time was to plot literature references over time. And it was, you know, that hockey puck shape. I bet you would see the same if you were to Google scotobiology and look for the references that use it.
Yeah.
So let's look a little bit more into the specific impact of light pollution on our local wildlife, what it does. There are several categories of processes that end up being messed up when the night sky is interrupted by light pollution of any type. One category, excuse me, are problems of orientation. We're talking here about wildlife's inability to locate themselves in their night environment. Think about moths being attracted to a street light, or birds being thrown off of their migration patterns because of light, problems of orientation. Also problems of predation. When there's light pollution, prey animals are subject to more predators. There are more predators active in light, and predators are subject to more competition from other predators. So for prey animals also, if there are more predators out, they have less time to forage. So they're being impacted in both ways, being preyed upon more and not having enough time to find their own food. Competition, again, among these, the predators. Some do better in nights that have higher levels of light than others, and they outcompete those species that don't do as well in more of a higher light situation. Reproduction, this is specifically related to those animals that have visual cues necessary to conduct their mating and courtship rituals, like a firefly. And lastly, impact not just humans, our circadian rhythms are impacted by light pollution, but animals as well. All of the processes that are controlled by light, including sleep, are disturbed when there is too much light in the evening for our wildlife. Let's look a little bit then at some specific species and groups of animals, and look at how light pollution specifically impacts them. So bats, let's start there. It's a nice place to start because not everyone's a fan of bats. I would imagine that here with the Wild Ones group, you all are, but in my job, and I know Valerie's in the audience, and she can remember that when we're talking to families and kids, not everyone's a bat lover. There's a lot of mythology out there that bats will get caught in your hair, that they drink your blood. So just a lot of fear about bats, but bats are really important to our ecosystem. They play an important role. not specifically in Illinois, but across the world, there are many bats that pollinate fruits and flowers. Here in Illinois and elsewhere, bats eat a ton of insects, and these are insects that many of them, that we would like to see gone, that destroy our crops, cause disease, and annoy us. So bats,
like mosquitoes.
Like mosquitoes, yes, exactly. Yep. So they're doing us a service. That's why we should care about bats being impacted by light pollution. The specific impact that light at night has on bats is twofold. One is a very unusual occurrence. So I'm a scuba diver, and one of the things that you learn as a diver is that when you're down at depth and you come up from an area of high pressure down, at 60 feet or so, and you rise, you really have to go slowly so that you're rising through those layers of less pressure and decompressing properly so that you don't get bubbles of nitrogen in your blood and your lungs don't burst. Same thing happens to bats, very similar to that, similar to what's called the bends. Bats are attracted to the lights on wind turbines. As they get close to those turbines, there is a very large drop in atmospheric pressure around the turbine. They're attracted to it. There's a barotrauma that occurs where the pressure sinks are, and their lungs do explode and they end up dying. So that's one impact, and not a very pretty one. And the other is that the food that bats are out seeking at night, insects, is often attracted to artificial lights, like a porch light or a street light. Think about moths circling around a light, or June bugs. And so there are certain bats that are more agile than others. A little brown bat is going to be able to maybe dart around and still get to its prey underneath a light, but others can't. So like a big brown bat might not be able to do so, like this big brown bat that we see in this picture. So those bats that can fare well near a light will be able to displace the bat species that don't do as well, leading to decreases in the species that don't exploit the lights as well. So that's bats. Insects, I think those are a little bit easier to understand in terms of the impact of light pollution. We see this happening all the time when we turn on lights. We see moths and other insects buzzing around our lights. We know something's going on when there's light pollution. So most insects have been in the news lately in terms of the declines that we've seen in insects. Most people know that insects are really critical to all life on Earth. If you like to eat, you like insects. I like to eat. Insects pollinate most of our fruits and flowers. They say that scientists say that 1 out of every 3 bites of your food that you eat, you can thank an insect, pollinating an insect for that bite. So 80% of our flowering plants and 75% of our food crops are pollinated, depend on insects for pollination. And a recent study, 2017, has shown that nocturnal pollinators are actually more effective at transferring pollen when they're out there nectaring than their diurnal counterparts. So it's especially important for our food and our flowers that those nocturnal pollinators numbers are held steady and are not impacted. But unfortunately, light pollution does impact them. Insects are also a primary food source of many animals, both in the larval and the adult form. Specifically, birds and fish really depend on insects for the bulk of their food supply. And lastly, insects play a major role in decomposition. So without insects, we'd have piles of debris. And insects are also beautiful. This is a white-lined sphinx moth that looks a bit like a hummingbird when it's in flight. So beauty is important too.
Yeah, the moths are especially attracted to that bright white light, and they are then more susceptible to predators. And of course, they tire and they fall and they die as compared to what they should be doing, which is, of course, pollinating at night.
Right.
The moths are a very underappreciated part of course, our pollination cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're attracted to the light, that's less time that they have to go out and feed. So that's a slower death, but being highlighted by the light, that makes them an easy target for prey. So insects are definitely in decline. This is not news to most of you, I would imagine, but there was an article in the 2018 New York Times Magazine that stated very boldly and bluntly that the insect apocalypse is here. Insect numbers are down tremendously, and that title in that article was coined mainly as a result of really the watershed study in insect decline, which was published in 2017 by a German citizen science group, actually, that had been studying a particular area in Germany for a period of 27 years. So this is a long-range study, and it was fairly simplistic. They were specifically looking at total insect biomass. So not individual insect species, but the compilation of all insects over that 27-year period. And they found a 75% decline in biomass, which is huge. So that study, as well as others since then, really fed into this New York Times Magazine article. The article specifically called out about 90% declines in the monarch butterfly population, as well as nearly 90% declines in the rusty patch bumblebee that has since been declared endangered and is on the endangered species list at this point. So it really all started with this New York Times article that was fed by the 2017 study. So most everyone agrees that we are seeing large declines in insects, not all because of light pollution. I mean, the main causes in insect decline are habitat loss, pesticide use, but light pollution actually does have a pretty big role. And a study published in 2018 did, later than that, in 2020, showed that light pollution actually is one of the drivers of the insect apocalypse. It's not just habitat degradation and pesticide use. It showed that because insects are, it gave the reasons why light pollution is so impactful in the decline of insects. The fact that insects are attracted to artificial lights, as Adam was saying, and they keep circling and eventually tire out and fall to the ground and die. If they are a prey insect, especially like in the street light shown here, they're attracted to that light. A bat can see that insect very easily. Moth, like you see on the right of the street light, much easier to see that moth and grab it as you see that moth or that bat flying in to make its kill. And for those insects like the firefly in the middle of that streetlight beam that depend on light signals to attract a mate, those signals are obscured. All of these leading to decline in insects and contributing to that insect apocalypse. So there's a couple of insects here, and you can see that the light pollution for insects and any wildlife really is not just direct light from the street light, but on the far right there, you can see that sky glow that Adam mentioned. So this really all comes together, impacting not just humans, but the wildlife as well. It's all of these sources of light pollution.
It's just one big bright light mess here where we live at times.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I can't really remember being anywhere, and I live fairly well west in Kane County. But the sky glow, towards Aurora and the Tri-Cities area, you can't get away from it. You have to go very far west. But let's take a deeper look at three particular species of insects and drill down and see the impact that light has on them. So our moths, fireflies, and the often misunderstood dung beetle. So moths are specially adapted to nectaring on flowers at night. A particular moth of interest is that hawk moth that has co-evolved with flowers that bloom in the evening, give off a nice sweet scent to attract those moths. The hawk moth is specifically specialized with that long proboscis to nectar on flowers that are long and tubular shaped. They're particularly well adapted to nectar on datura species, evening primrose, and then morning glories as the night is coming to an end. So you can see that hawk moth here extending that long proboscis into the tubular shaped night blooming flower. But the moth is not going to be able to find that flower very well. The flower is not going to bloom as well if there's light pollution. The moths are disoriented by artificial light, and if they're drawn away from their flowers towards the street light, they're never going to make it to that flower to nectar. And a third of them typically die before morning if they're attracted to a light. When you see all those moths circling around, a third of them are going to be found on the ground due to exhaustion or have been predated during the evening. So moths are definitely up there in terms of light impact. Fireflies. So fireflies are fascinating. There aren't that many examples of bioluminescence in the animal kingdom. So bioluminescence is different than fluorescence. So bioluminescence is actual production of light in the organism. So fireflies in their abdomen have an enzyme called luciferase that catalyzes luciferin to emit light. It's a nice cold light, so it's a very efficient chemical reaction. And that light, those lamps, flash in certain patterns and in different colors even. This is a green lamp, but some have red or orange lamps, and the particular color and flash pattern and flash rate is specific to the species. So different firefly species use different colors and lamps to signal to a mate. The female typically sits towards the ground and flashes and attracts the male to come in and mate. And in some cases actually fakes a signal of another species to attract a male of another firefly species to come in and eat in a cannibalistic way. But either, whether it's to attract a mate or to eat a tasty snack, it's important that the light can be seen, and with light pollution, it cannot. So with the disruption of either eating or firefly sex, you have declines in population impacted by light. And lastly,
remember when we were younger and we could see all those fireflies? They were just everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, and it still can in some areas. I took my son on a college visit out east several years ago now, and it seemed like the populations of fireflies we were near Ithaca, New York, and they just seemed to be, well, that was also a fairly rural area, much bigger numbers than we have here. So hopefully it is a regional occurrence. Dung beetles are the third specific insect that we'll take a little look at. Dung beetles are ball rolling beetles that take small portions of dung and roll them and bury them and feed on them. So they like to get away from the main deposit of scat or dung and take their little treat far away, so there isn't as much competition with other beetles that are attracted to that large pile. So to do that, to pack and then roll their little ball away from the main source, they actually use celestial cues, kind of like birds migrating, to map out a direction away from that main source. And with artificial light, they will often get turned around and circle and end up back at the main pile where they face increased foraging competition and declines in population. So even the lowly dung beetle is impacted by light pollution. Maybe not the poster child of the insect that we most love, but again, they play a role in cleaning up the environment, and they have a niche that they fill, and we would hate to see them go. Oops. Birds. Okay, this is the next group that we'll tackle. So some birds are nocturnal, like this barred owl, and other birds are migrating at night. Both are impacted by light pollution. Why do we care? So birds, like bats, eat insect pests. And worldwide, birds will eat 400 to 500 tons of insects per year. So again, this is mosquitoes. This is some insects that we are not particularly fond of. It's all tied together though. Birds scavenge carcasses. They play a role in cleaning up the environment. They hunt rodents. Mice, field mice, voles are active. They're nocturnal, and birds are out, like the owls, are out hunting in the evening. Birds disperse seeds. Wild Ones definitely cares about that, and spread new plants from the parent plant so that they can grow away from that parent. They help pollinate plants, think hummingbirds, and they're bioindicators. They can sense toxins and pollutants in the environment. They're impacted by them, and by noticing that the impact that the toxins are having on birds, we can take action before it spreads further. Think here DDT and bald eagles. Knowing that that's a problem, we're able to take action to eliminate the use of DDT. The bald eagle recovered, and any other species that would have been impacted by that DDT were benefited by the birds being a bioindicator. And just lastly, I mean, we all know Auduboners, and birding just definitely generates joy and economic upside. A lot of people love to bird, and bird tourism is a thing. It's just a joyful experience. But birds, as we all know, are in trouble. This very newsworthy article was published in 2019 in Science, a very well-respected scientific journal, and it was shared by the Cornell Ornithology Institution, showing that since 1970, over the past 50 years, North America has lost 29% of its total bird population. So this is huge. This is nearly 3 billion birds in those past 50 years, mainly impacted. This is mainly caused by habitat destruction and habitat fragmentation. Next is invasive species like cats, but light pollution is in there as well. Collisions with buildings are a big problem with birds as they're migrating. So light pollution plays a major role in this sad story about the decline of birds. The specific impact that light pollution has is really highlighted by this picture here. So the skyline of Chicago, you can see that those skyscrapers lit up at night. So birds use, like the dung beetle, birds use celestial cues to navigate. They also use the magnetic poles and the sense of smell. It's not completely understood, but scientists think that those are the 3 biggest factors that drive migration. So as birds are migrating, traveling those thousands of miles, sometimes cross-continent, they get distracted by light pollution. So the distraction, sometimes they will think that light on the skyscraper is the moon, or is a bright cluster of stars. They'll be lured towards the building, and if they don't die immediately by crashing into the building, which happens frequently, unfortunately, they will die more slowly by other means. Start circling the building, similar to moths circling a street light, and that circling activity will wear them down. It's a lot of work to keep on circling all through the night. and they won't have as much time to go out and find food and water. And just like moths under a street light, they are highlighted for predation. And by that light, and especially as they're getting weaker from circling, they're an easy target for prey, and they end up dying and just falling to the ground from exhaustion. So light pollution, again, bad news there. And how many birds are we talking about? Unfortunately, quite a few. Most of the birds in North America are migratory. So 70% of terrestrial birds migrate, and 80% of those migrate at night, which means that over 50% of all terrestrial birds in the North America continent migrate at night. They tend to follow 4 major flyways in North America that are shown in the map on the right here. And one of them, Mississippi Flyway, is a very important one, and it's right by us. This is spring migration, so it's especially topical to look at the fact that we're on the Mississippi Flyway, and all these birds are flying by, and we have big cities. We're right here in Chicago, right in the middle of that flyway. And unfortunately, Chicago does have a lot of high rises and does have a lot of light pollution. And we have the unfortunate award of being the city in North America with the highest rate of bird deaths in both migration periods, which is not a good position to have, obviously. But there are a couple of things that are positive. I'd like to always point those out. A study by the Field Museum very recently showed that just by turning off the lights at one high rise, you can reduce migratory bird deaths at that, around that building by 80%. Chicago participates in the Lights Out Chicago program that encourages downtown business owners to turn off the lights at the top of their buildings all night long and to reduce light at the bottom and in the outsides of their buildings. And they say that this is having an impact since 1995 when that program started of saving 10,000 birds per year. So it's a problem that we can solve, and there are some efforts underway to do so.
And the International Dark Sky Association is collaborating with Audubon.
Yeah.
I think you can see that in some of these slides.
Yeah. Is there anything, did the IDA sponsor that Field Museum study, Adam? Do you know?
I believe they were involved with it significantly. And I believe that they've helped influence some of these cities other than just Chicago to try to be more dark sky compliant at night, because birds do not hit buildings that are not lighted. They hit buildings that are lighted.
Yes. Yep. Okay, well, so we talked all about different species of wildlife, but let's look at the other organisms, specifically near and dear to the hearts of the Wild Ones group, and that is the plant kingdom. I don't think I have to convince you, but plants are really critical to all life on the planet. As producers, they're the only organisms that can convert the light of the sun into energy through photosynthesis, and therefore they support the entire food web. All consumers depend on producers, depend on plants. Plants supply fiber products, cotton, hemp, timber. They generate oxygen through photosynthesis and water through transpiration. So if you like to breathe, you like plants. They improve air quality by filtering pollutants out of the air, and water quality by reducing erosion and runoff. They sequester carbon. Trees alone sequester 13% of the carbon dioxide emissions in the United States. And there's been a lot of studies lately that show just getting out for a walk in the woods improves not just your physical health, reduces your weight, and eliminates or helps reduce physical ailments, heart disease and diabetes, but it really improves your mental health, especially in these COVID times. It's just such a mind relief, and just gives you a good feeling to get out in nature, reduce stress, and reduce anxiety. So plants, we love plants for all of these reasons. Plants are light dependent too. I think everyone knows that plants need light to photosynthesize. But it goes a little deeper than that. So it's the light, timing, intensity, and wavelength that provide cues to regulating plant growth and thriving. Plants do use light as an energy source for photosynthesis, but they also require light to inform many of their other physiological processes, those processes that tell them when to do certain life events or phenology. And phenology includes things like bud burst and new leaf formation, flower development, seed setting, leaf fall. All of these are informed by the timing, intensity, and wavelength of light. The growth form of any plant depends on all of these light factors as well. How tall a tree has to grow to reach above the canopy, for instance. And lastly, the timing, intensity, and wavelength of light tell the plant how to allocate resources to different types of growth, for instance, root formation. So a particular term that plants use to define the fact that they're not just dependent on light, but they're dependent on the length of day, and the length of night is termed photoperiodism. And plants do have a photoperiodism. That is that length of light versus night that causes plants to flower, to switch to a reproductive mode at certain times of the year as the seasons change. So photoperiodism is more than just the presence of light, it's the length of the light and the length of the night. Plants are grouped into a couple of different categories depending on their preferred photoperiods. So there are 3 categories, and I'm going to talk about 2 real quickly, and I'm going to turn it back over to Adam. So short day plants require a short day and a long evening to flower, whereas long day plants require long day, short nights to flower. Without those conditions, they won't flower. Day neutral plants are not picky. They will thrive in either condition. Short day plants are typically those, the short days occur in the spring and the fall, and they include plants like mums, onions, and some of those other late producing vegetables. Long day plants are those that bloom in the middle of summer typically, like irises and coneflowers, lettuce, and spinach. If we look at, in both of these sides of the graph, we take the short day plants on the left, the long day plants on the right, and we look at the far left column in each of those. See what happens when we have a long day and a short night. In the short day plants, the long day and the short night lead to no flowering. Whereas in the long day plants, that's the kind of scenario they want. They want a long day and a short night, and that will incent them to flower. Short day plants are the opposite. They like having a short day and a long night. They flower, whereas long day plants on the right will not flower in those conditions. But the really interesting thing, look at the far right graph bar in both of these 2 panels. The short day plants, even when the day is short and the night is long, if there is a flash of light, if the darkness is interrupted, those plants almost have the same experience they would as if the day was long. They don't flower. They do not like that flash of light, that light pollution in the middle of the evening. It causes them to not flower, and if they don't flower, they're not going to produce seed. On the long day plants, it's the reverse. If you look at the far right, short day, long night with an interrupted night period, they think that is a long day and they'll flower. So these groups are really dependent not just on the length of day and the length of night, but it's the period of uninterrupted darkness that is really important to causing plants to flower. So because of that, light pollution disrupts the timing, intensity, and wavelength of light, and it really has a big impact on those short day plant flowering species. like we find flowering in the spring and in the fall. Get a flash of light at night and those plants are not going to flower. And other physiological responses too are impacted by light pollution. The phenology, or the bud burst time or the leaf fall, if there are flashes of light at night or light pollution, it's going to impact all of these processes, not just flowering. And we talked already about how light pollution impacts the behavior of pollinators and herbivores, and those in turn are going to impact the growth of the plant. If you don't have a hawk moth out there to pollinate the flower, then you're not going to have seed setting on that particular plant. So light pollution impacts plants just as much as it does wildlife. But there's good news, and Adam's going to follow on with here on how we can solve it. It's an easy problem to solve, and that is, we can't say that about all of our ecological problems. We can simply turn the lights out, and there are other steps that we can take to switch to different type of bulbs, and fairly easy solutions. If everything was this easy, we would be in good shape. It's just a matter of actually getting people to know how they can take these actions. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam so he can address those points now.
Yeah, thank you, Barb.
Yeah.
The most important thing we can do is just simply turn off the lights. So I want to, and I'm always fascinated. I've learned so much through listening to Barb, especially, with respect to the plants and the effect that artificial light at night has on our plants. I would have never thought of that, but it's incredible how much it does impact flowering and things of that nature. So I just wanted to show everybody real quick before I get into the weeds, and I'm not going to be too long, but what I've got here is I've got a shielded light bulb. This is a 5,000 Kelvin bulb. This is your bright white blue bulb, 5,000 Kelvin. It's sold as a daylight bulb. And look how bright that is. It's really horrific. So if you don't have it shielded, like most of us don't, right? We have those coach lights and so on and so forth. And parking lots have these lights out like this. It's horrible. But if it's shielded, of course, it's better. It's bringing that down at more or less a 45-degree angle. So for all of you that are somewhat concerned about security, this is the bulb that I suggest you buy. It's 2,700 Kelvin. You're still going to get all the light you need, sincerely, believe me. But it's removing all that blue-white light. It's removing all that harmful light. And if we shield it down, then of course all the better. And if we reduce the brightness, then of course all the better. So here's some easy examples. So let me talk about a few things through slides again. Oops, I gotta go back. I gotta go down. Where were we? Okay. So we can make a difference. It's such a simple fix, like Barb just emphasized. Who wants to change, right? Everybody raises their hand. Who wants to change? People start to look away. Who wants to lead the change? It's difficult to do that. All of you being here, I think, are leaders, and I appreciate your being here. We can lead by setting examples. One of the things we can do is try to influence our municipalities, our park districts, whatever the case may be, to become dark sky compliant. The Village of Homer Glen is one of the pioneers doing that. They are IDA dark sky compliant. They're focused on fixtures and light bulbs and things of that nature, and they try to address it with every new development and so on. There are other dark sky municipalities. You don't necessarily have to be a dark sky certified IDA dark sky municipality to make a difference. Hawthorne Woods, Illinois is the newest IDA dark sky community. They just joined. They have an ordinance and they have certain things that they have to meet to get that certification from IDA. At home, if we don't want to otherwise be an advocate and run out and try to change the world like me, kind of, we can try to encourage what neighbors do. I've sent letters to my neighbors, and I've tried to focus on things that everybody can more or less, I guess, agree with, like fireflies. Everybody loves fireflies. The kids get excited about fireflies. So I emphasized how much impact artificial light at night on our porches and on our garages affect fireflies. And I followed that up with another letter that addressed moths. And incredibly, I think most of the people on our street turned off their lights, or at least did what they could do to reduce the amount of their light pollution. So we can make a difference just by trying to influence our neighbors in nice, polite ways. And I can make these letters available to anybody if they want to see them. So other than being an advocate and trying to influence your neighbors, what can you do at home? Pretty easy stuff. Here's kind of more or less a template. All light should have a clear purpose. Sometimes we just have lights on because we have lights on. We don't even know they're on. They're on, they're on, they're on, they're on, they're on all the time. So do you really need that light? Can you just turn it off? Sometimes we have ornamental lights. Why? I don't know. We like to light up our homes for some reason. Light should be directed only where we need it. So shielding is very important, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We want to make sure the light is shielded and it's not shining out, it's not shining up, right? No sky glow, no glare, no light trespass. Light should be no brighter than necessary. We kind of think of that from the perspective of watts, you know, with the old Tommy ads and things of that nature. We go out, we buy watts, 100 watt, 40 watt. We want to use less watts. We want to get down to the 40 watts. We want to get down to less lumens. Of course, light should only be used when it's useful. So if we do want to have that light, if we think we need that light, and some of us do for security reasons and so forth, maybe on a motion sensor, maybe on a dimmer. So if we have a dimmable LED, which of course we want to have because it's more energy and efficient, can we time that light so that at a certain period of time at night, that brightness levels reduce dramatically, maybe 50, 60, 70%, if we need that light on all night. And then, I'm sorry, I went too far. The color of the light is very important. So when I speak about Kelvin, I'm talking about color. For some reason, Kelvin is color. Don't ask me why, I don't know. So shielding. We want a fixture that's going to shield the light down at a 45-degree angle. So you see to the left, we've got garage lights that are not shielded. They're exposing that light out. It's glare, it's light trespass, it's sky glow. But if we just change out the fixture, we're directing that light down onto the apron where it's needed, where really it probably was intended to be in the first place. We're reducing all that light pollution simply by the choice of the fixture that we're using. So here we have examples of fixtures. We got the globe lights, and you know, some of those are vintage lights, and I get it. So if we got to use a globe light because that's what we need for whatever reason, you know, think about the light bulb, think about the brightness, think about the motion sensors, think about the dimming. And then as you can see, as we move to the right, we've got the best fixture, which again is directing that light down at a 45-degree angle. So it's not shining into our neighbors' bedrooms or into our wildlife habitats. So this is from the Home Depot, not too far from my home. You can kind of see here, similar to what I have. You've got some of these fixtures on the left. They're available, they're everywhere. You just, you know, can choose to buy those instead of the other fixtures that we see that are not shielded down. And most of these fixtures, they're the same price. There are hundreds of them available. And if you go to the International Dark Sky Association website, they will direct you to the fixtures that are dark sky compliant. You look at what you like, okay, all different kinds, and it'll take you actually to the store where you can buy it and you can order it online right from the IDA website. So you'll see here on the IDA website what's acceptable. and what's not acceptable. So visit www.darksky.org and it will help you find your way. So let's talk about the bulb, which I just showed you, right? The 2700 versus the 5000. 5000, if you look to the right here, 5000 is daylight. And when you go to the store, you're going to see they basically have daylight bulbs. Those are the blue-white bulbs that are affecting your melatonin and so on and so forth, the circadian rhythm. So as you move to a lesser Kelvin score, you want to get to the 2700 Kelvin. And typically at the store, you're going to see that advertised as a soft white bulb. And then you've got 3000 and a little bit more, and you'll typically see that advertised as a bright white bulb. We want to go with a 2700. If you're putting a bulb outdoors, please choose not to use more than a 2700 Kelvin bulb. And you'll find it on the package. You may have to look for it, but you'll find it on the package. And if you want to make even more of a difference, you can go with something that's maybe a 2200. And this is especially true for your ornamental lights. So if you've got a coach light, for example, outside where you can see the bulb, you may want to put in one of these. It's beautiful. And it's only 2200 Kelvin. So it's taken out all that blue white light and it's actually more pretty, I think. So you can kind of see what we're doing here with the range of bulbs, right? 5000, bright white, blue. So we get further up the scale, you're getting more blue, more white. And as you get further to the left, you're getting less bright white, less blue, more yellow, and of course, a better light bulb generally. And we're talking about outdoors. You may choose to use this stuff indoors if you, the brighter lights indoors if you choose to, but think twice about outdoors. So here's an example of some of the bulbs right before we wrap up here, because we are getting a little bit late. Soft white at the top, that's 2700. Typically you'll see on the package, you'll see a little box. So if it doesn't say 2700 somewhere prominently, it will say 2700 on the box. You'll see it, you'll find it. But again, mostly it's going to be advertised as soft white. And get the dimmable LEDs. And then you see here, you've got the daylight. That's 5000 Kelvin. That's a bad boy. Don't use it outside, please. And you've got the bright white next to it, which is 3000. Too much for outdoors. And then you want to look at the wattage. So with watts outdoors, don't use any more than 60 watts. That's an equivalent of a brightness of 800 lumens. So if you see something more than 800, please don't use it, even if it's soft white. It's too bright. And sincerely, you'll do just fine with a 40-watt bulb. Look for 40 watts, which is a lumens of 450 lumens. So soft white, 2700 Kelvin, brightness level of not more than 450 lumens, unless you really want to go to 60 watts and 800 lumens. And of course, have that fixture that directs the light down. I've had a hard time finding floodlights that are soft white. It's been very difficult for me to find them. And some of the little yard lights, patio lights are sometimes difficult. But if you look hard enough, you can find the 2700 with the less lumens, but it may be a little bit more difficult. I was at Menards, and for the life of me, I couldn't find a floodlight that was not at least 3000 Kelvin. And most of them were brighter with more significant brightness. So there's a beautiful fixture with a 2700 watt bulb and less brightness, and you can see the lovely stars. Remember, we have the benefit of GPS. We have the benefit of human technology. Our little animal friends, our little insect friends, they don't have GPS. The birds don't have GPS. They don't have technology. They don't have blue blocker glasses. They're still reacting to all the generations of what basically they are. And light pollution is killing them. and ultimately it's killing us. So there you go. www.darksky.org. So I whistled through that pretty quickly, but it is pretty quick. And you can make those good decisions, turning those lights off and getting the right fixture and the right bulb, really without spending any more money than you would on anything different.
Well, that was great, kind of depressing in some, but it's fascinating. I learned so much. I have all sorts of notes here in front of me. We do have a few questions. Let me go back down here. Let's see. What about yellow outdoor lights? Are they disruptive to plants, animals? I guess you kind of just talked about that pretty much. So obviously the lower the Kelvin, 2700 or lower, correct? For the
Barb, you want to tackle the plant question?
Well, the red and the blue spectrum are the ones that are most distracting to plants. It's the wavelengths that they use most frequently to regulate their processes. So therefore, I guess the yellow falls outside of the range of blue and red.
Okay. So yellow would be better than the blue or the red. Okay, good. What are some plants or flowers that can be planted to attract and sustain the night feeders? This person is thinking of putting in a night garden.
Nice, like a moon garden. I actually have a book about moon gardening. Yeah, so native plant wise, be anything in the evening primrose family, and the Datura genus, and evening campion.
Oh, cool.
There's a couple, I think these are non-native. There's a moonflower, it's a member of the morning glory. I don't think it's native though. And flowering tobacco, I don't know if that one is native. I don't think it is.
Okay, this person asked, he said, or he or she said, I detest the street lights, but she said, he or she said, do you know of any cities or towns that have reconsidered even having street lights or taking them down? Well, you talked about Homer Glen and Hawthorne Hills, I think you said, right? But I can't imagine, but maybe you would know if there actually some towns are considering doing away with streetlights.
I'm not aware of any towns that are actually doing away with streetlights. I think what we do see, especially Tucson, for example, and Flagstaff and some of those westernmost cities, they are taking lights out, but not eliminating lights completely. The lights that they do have, they're reducing to 2700 Kelvin. They're having less brightness with those bulbs, and they're also dimming them. So that's typically what we find with the municipalities. They may use less lights generally, but the streets are still being somewhat lit.
Okay. Let's see. Corey said he heard that at one point he heard that Chicago was going to change the color of their city lights to change aggressiveness in people. That's a whole other story about light, color, and aggressiveness.
Yeah.
No, I knew as a special ed teacher that the green and blues are supposed to keep a person calmer. I don't know how that goes for lights.
I'm not sure that blue is going to help you be calmer. I think it's probably going to make you more agitated. Chicago did change recently to all LEDs. Yeah. They went with 3000 Kelvin, which certainly was a step in the right direction, but unfortunately their brightness levels are horrible. And a lot of people are very much upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not dimming those lights at night. So even though Chicago made an effort, they really missed the boat in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Oh, so can't read well. Is there any legislation that you've heard of being proposed or considered in Illinois for light pollution? Is it like a state thing, or is it just really going by municipalities that you've heard of?
Yes, there is a current ordinance, statute that is being addressed, I believe, in committee by the state of Illinois. That's been, I think, sponsored by many Congress people up on the North Shore. that basically is intended to address the effect that light pollution has on migrating birds.
Wow.
And as part of that, they're addressing the lights too, the fixtures, the light bulbs, the brightness.
Wow, do you think that has some traction? That would be nice.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Right now it's in committee. It's hard to say.
That's good. This person asked, what about indoor lights? Should a person use their shades or draperies to be sure the lights from inside aren't going to the outside? Does it have an impact? Inside lights have an impact on the outside.
Well, I think inside lights can certainly have an impact on the outside, depending on basically how that light is shining outside. I think many people find that 2700 Kelvin works just as well indoors as it does outdoors. But for some reason, people like brighter lights indoors. So I guess like anything else, maybe just think how those lights are affecting your neighbors.
Yeah, and as the migrating birds are settling in for the night, they'll often be attracted to an indoor light shining through the window, and that's when they have the collision with the window. So part of that Lights Out Chicago program is not just to turn off the lights at the top of the building, at the 40 stories and up. That's where most of the collisions occur at night, but to convince people to turn off the lower story indoor lights too for that settling in period.
Yeah, the atrium lights, especially because the birds will see that there are plants in there.
Yeah.
And of course, they're attracted to that, and
Oh,
they're hitting the window.
Right.
So it's not just at the top of the building, but it's also on the floor levels too.
Yeah.
And that can be true at our own homes, although I don't know if it's as significant.
so many things to consider. One person wrote that maybe we should just teach people to not be afraid of the dark too. I mean, that would be a plus. You think I got all the questions, Luann, with my glasses on?
I
or
see
off?
a chat. Sarah Kimber was wondering if Adam would share his letter to send to neighbors.
I can definitely do that. I can share that through you. My
Yeah.
letters are posted on a website through Go Green Illinois. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that organization. They're primarily in Cook and DuPage counties. I don't know if there's a Kane County presence yet, but you can find it at the Go Green Illinois website. And I have shared my letters. So Kim, Luann, if you want to ask for them and post them, I'll get them to you right away.
Good idea. Thanks.
Sure.
And I did want to do, this is being recorded and you can go to our Start in Your Yard written out.com website. I also, before I forget too, we still have a few programs coming up on the Start in Your Yard websites and book talks and a few more programs. I forgot to say that before. So I just wanted to throw that in now, but the recording, you can access it through startinyouryard.com. Luann, did I miss anything else?
Did you talk about the community read?
Oh, that's on the Start in Your Yard. Oh, there's still 3 more, I think, right?
Yeah.
Coming up. 3 more, if you can find that on Start in Your April 12th, April 20th, and June 16th. Yes. This has just been fascinating. I can't thank you enough. I just learned so much. So I think that's, are we about, did I forget anything else, Luann?
No,
Are we done?
that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly. Yes, visit us at startingyouryard.com or on our website or our Facebook page and come to our programs. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's a fascinating program. Thank you so much to Barb and Adam. Thank you.
Thanks
Good
for
night,
having us. It was great to chat.
You're welcome. Thanks, Barb. It really does
thanks,
blow
Adam.
you. It really does blow you away how much light pollution is affecting all of us.
Yes. Amazed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for having us.
Good night.
Thanks, you
Good
guys.
night.
Everybody.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.